Yo, what's up, y'all? We back out here yet again, another video, trying to get 3 degrees buffer in this cold, even though it's like 30 some degrees out here. We don't care, man. We out here making it happen anyways. Yes, like, subscribe, and share if you appreciate it. Talk a little bit down below based on what you hear, if you feel it. If not, cool, let's talk about it. But anyways, I want to get into the video for today. So I was able to finally get some traction going on my theology of mission paper. And what's interesting about this paper is that for a class I did a couple years back, I guess one of the last classes I did for the master's was Old Testament theology. I had to do a theology of mission paper based on the Old Testament using the covenants. That's what my area of focus was. So I had done a lot of research already in the area, kind of leading into this doctoral class, that I thought was going to be very useful. But it's hard to, how do you say it? It's hard to rewrite or repurpose information that you've researched before, because it almost doesn't touch the same exact context as when you were looking it up the first time. It's kind of like the same thing that happens when you read a book multiple times. You get different things from it each time that you read it, and a lot of those different things you get in those different times are based on what you're actually going through and what you're experiencing at the time that you read it. So you're keyed into different aspects of it that you may not have been reading it at another time. So looking at it from that perspective, it's been really interesting looking at it, because I'm reading through the old paper and it's like, yeah, this would apply to this, this would apply to this. But figuring out how it fits in and how I can take advantage of the same source and the research that's been done to make it fit together in a completely different way for this new paper, it's been interesting. But it's good. At least I have it, and it'll save. Well, there's probably at least 20 sources already from that one, in addition to the 20 other ones that I found. So this thing's going to be loaded. And I know it's going to be loaded because it's supposed to be, I think, between, what was it, 7,000 to 10,000 words. And I think I'm at just over 2,000, maybe 3 right now. It's slim pickings. Let's see. Okay, I am above 3,200 words. So I'm not even halfway there yet. And I guess what makes this one so much more interesting, the old theology of mission paper that I did was around 5,000, 5,700 words. And it was like, boom, start to finish, it felt really crisp. But this one here, it's like, I've gone through pretty much the Old Testament setup for what I'm getting into, which is Isaiah 59, 20 through Isaiah 61 through 3. And kind of looking at how this aspect of what was the purpose of the covenants that God gave to his people, these agreements, these joint partnerships that God entered into with his people, what were they supposed to do, and why didn't it go the way that it was supposed to? And then tying that into the story of Peter and Cornelius in the New Testament, Acts chapter 10. So it's been really cool looking at these things, but after going through all the Old Testament stuff, this is where I am, which is wild to me because I haven't even really started breaking down the New Testament aspect of this, and that's going to be essentially the other half of this paper, which also works because I don't think I would be in line for full credit, or I don't think I would have done the assignment right if the majority of the paper was the Old Testament stuff, even though it's important. I think more effort is going to be needed to break down how this stuff plays into the New Testament story. Now, just to give you kind of a glimpse, I might break down the paper in segments and talk about it later online. But the general idea is this. When you look through the entire Old Testament, whether it's creation, through Noah, through Abraham, through David, through Ezekiel, through Isaiah, all these different covenant and 10 Commandments, the Exodus, all these different covenant conversations that God is having with his people, we assume, or I guess we end up focusing a lot on the fact of these blessings that God was trying to give his people. And it's true. God did want to bless his people in a great way for their kind of respecting of him as God and appreciation of him as their king, so to speak, right? But there's so much more to the story when you consider the fact that Israel continued to have issues with keeping to the covenants. And you had the Assyrian captivity, you had Babylonian captivity, you had kind of this intertestamental period where the Hebrew people are coming back into their land and trying to reestablish a nation. You have the Pharisees, the Jewish leaders that come into power. It's really interesting to see that the perception of the covenants was that it's about right and wrong. The Ten Commandments is the perfect example of this. Everybody looks at the Ten Commandments as if the only thing it's about is do this and don't do that. And the point of it that's missed almost always is the relational aspect. Some people think that the Ten Commandments, the first line of it is thou shalt not, or what's the first commandment? You shall have no other gods before me, right? But before that, the actual beginning of the Ten Commandments is a line that says, I am the Lord your God who has delivered you. And it qualifies God for who he is and why he's the one who's good enough, and why you can trust his word when it comes to him giving this covenant and these promises. And every single covenant follows this pattern where there's a relational aspect, God proving himself to the people and saying, here's who I am. And because of who I am, you can trust what I'm telling you. But it doesn't stop there, right? Because there's a missional aspect of it. And one of the books that I researched, I forget exactly the line, but it said something to the effect of every, the word starts with an E. I can't remember it. Every election goes hand in hand with a commission. There is no election without commission. That's what the line was. And essentially, God's people are being chosen over and over again from Adam and Eve all the way through the Old Testament. And every single time in these moments, people look at the fact that they were chosen and think, I've arrived. I got it. Thank you. This is awesome. This is great. And that's only the first, it's barely even the first part of it because of what God wants us to do within the covenant. He wants us to share the relationship that we have with him to other people around us who may not have that yet. And that's where gospel comes in. That's where the commission comes in. And this is something that has existed as long as there's been God and as long as there's been covenant. Even though we don't see gospel commission in the Old Testament, it's embedded in every single covenant of the Old Testament. So the reason this is significant, I mentioned the captivities earlier. Isaiah comes along and he actually is in the unique position of being able to prophesy to the 10 northern tribes and the 2 southern tribes, the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah, right before each of them enters into Assyrian captivity and Babylonian captivity. And what's interesting about this is he's like a unifying factor because he, in a sense, is like one of the last prophetic voices that the entirety of Israel, all 12 tribes, ends up getting to hear. And something that he brings up in the passage I mentioned before, Isaiah 59, last verse, through the first couple verses of the next chapter, chapter 60, is how God promises that he's still going to be with his people. He says, hey, I'm telling you right now, I still got you. You're still my people. This is my covenant with you. I still have a blessing for you. The Messiah is going to come. Everything's going to be all good. And that's how chapter 59 ends, but it continues right into the next verse, chapter 60, verse 1. It says, arise, shine, for your light has come. And then he talks about needing to share this with the other people because Gentiles are supposed to come to the light as well. Now, when you think about this as a prophecy that Isaiah is sharing with God's people, I think it's fair to say we don't see this often or corporately reflected among Israel, right? We see little instances where I think it's Elijah goes to the widow of Zarephath and is able to witness to her. And you have the slave girl who goes and witnesses to Naaman, I think the Syrian general, something like that. I don't remember the stories. I got to refresh my memory. There's little stories. You have Ruth, where she goes with Naomi and she comes back and she's witnessed to by Naomi. You have Rahab, who ends up being brought into God's people as Jericho's being surrounded and taken out after the Israelites have left the wilderness. Going back even further, you have some Egyptians who left Egypt with the children of Israel when they left after the 10 plagues. So you have these little instances where God is showing, hey, those foreigners, they're part of my people too. Those outsiders and those people you think are not like you and they don't have a part of us, no, they're part of us too. And you have these instances that show up all throughout the Bible, but you don't see, laundry's done, but you don't see the corporate identity say, hey, let's go and get these people and help them to be a part of who we are. It's always like this. And that's what was missed. Israel continually took the blessing and the covenant as more of an internal thing, and they did everything they could to represent it well, but there was a piece missing, and it was that missional aspect. That's what it was. And oddly enough, when you look at it, the Assyrian captivity and the Babylonian captivity results in the diaspora of the people. So now almost like by default, they're pushed out into other nations and other places to share who they are and what they've been blessed with others. It's interesting. But you get all the way down to the book of Acts, right? And this right here is the exact part I'm at in my paper right now. I was trying to figure out the transition from the Old Testament into this new story in the New Testament. And it's just really interesting because you have the mention of the Spirit of God who's going to be upon his people. That's a huge part of the new covenant mentioned in Isaiah, and the impetus for the followers of Christ in the book of Acts to go and do the great things and the great mission work that they did is the Spirit of God as well. John 17, where Jesus is telling the disciples, I'm going to send you another comforter, right? The Spirit who's going to come in to help them. And I think it's in the end of the Gospels. I don't remember exactly which one, but definitely in Acts 1 verse 8, and you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. So Isaiah 59 and that new covenant there is like the bridge. And I'm not saying this because I know this. I read something about this, so that's how I know it. All right, I'm not coming up with this off the top. Don't get it twisted. I got to reference my sources. But it's really cool to understand that this last essential prophecy that was a part of that everybody, that all 12 tribes were exposed to, ends up predicting, in a sense, what it's going to take for Israel to fulfill its destiny, for the people of God to fulfill their destiny. So now, instead of the nation being holed up inside and not wanting to accept Samaritans or the lepers or the woman in adultery, caught in adultery, or these people with other disabilities and other things like that, now you see Jesus coming, and once again, he's breaking the flow of what everyone expects is the right way to do things, because he's bringing these people in. He's hanging out with the tax collectors. He's hanging out with all the sinners, right? And he's telling everybody, this is why I'm here. This is what I'm supposed to do. And that prophecy, the new covenant in Isaiah, talks about the Messiah coming. And when the Messiah does come, this is what he expresses as his purpose for being here. He's the living embodiment of the covenant. So when people look at him, they get to see, oh, this is what covenant looks like. This is what this means. It means that we're here and we've been blessed with something, but I'm supposed to share this with everybody. And so his disciples pick up on this, and they have their struggles, like, why is he talking to that woman? Or why is he talking with these people? Or why is he associating with those folk? Why are we going to this place? They have their struggles with it, but eventually they get there. So much so to the point that they end up speaking in tongues on the day of Pentecost. And everybody who was there, if you count through, I think in chapter 2 or 3, if you count through the number of different countries or nationalities that are represented there, it's like 20 something. All right. I might have too many. Go count for yourself and see. It's a lot of people. All right. You go try to talk in one language and people from 10 different countries understand what you're saying. I can't do that, but they were able to do that under the power of the Holy Spirit that was mentioned specifically in Isaiah's New Covenant. And so now you have them going out to reach out. It's like, it's funny because when we look at it historically, we're like, okay, this is the point when the Gentiles were able to be a part of what God was trying to do. But the reality was, every covenant from the beginning of time was about God trying to initiate a relationship and a partnership with his people to bring outsiders in and to make everybody a part of the family. So you kind of get to see the limits of their own understanding when they say, wow, the Gentiles can be a part of this too. That's what it took for them to realize that. But their realization of that was the exact thing that God had been already trying to do for thousands of years. So you get to Peter and Cornelius, and even reading through the story a couple times yesterday or the past couple days, I noticed a few different things. So you have Peter, who's fallen asleep. He's hungry. He's on the roof, and he has this vision. Blanket falls down out of the heavens, filled with all these beasts that Peter, as a Jew, as a Hebrew, he knew he was not supposed to eat. And he hears the voice that says, take and eat. And he's like, nope, I'm not doing that. Those are unclean. Almost got me. And the voice returns and says, that which God, don't call common what God has made uncommon. Man, I need to look this up. I should have looked it up before I said it. But the idea is that Peter was calling this stuff common, and God was saying, I've blessed this, so it's okay. And this same thing happens 3 times. The next thing you know, the 3 men that Cornelius has sent, presumably foreigners, show up at the door saying, we're here for Peter. So I don't know if the 3 times he sees that, maybe one vision for each of the 3 guys that showed up. I don't know. Pure speculation, but it's interesting. And Peter says, oh, okay, I'll go with you. And he goes to Cornelius, and what we find out about Cornelius is that, and this is the really cool thing, because of his observation and his workings with God's people already, there were a lot of good things that he had picked up. We find that he was giving a tithe. We find that he was being a good servant to the people around him, even though he was in a position of power. So almost unknowingly, there were a handful of God's people who influenced him in a great way, to where he had already accepted God and was kind of doing his thing, even if he wasn't accepted by the people who he'd learned this from. And it's not until Peter comes and shows up, they have a conversation, he's interacting with them. And it's funny because he even brings 3 men from Cornelius came to get him, and he brings 6 people with him just as witnesses. So, because he knows what he's going to do is going to raise a big uproar amongst the Jewish leaders. And sure enough, it does. But anyways, it's just funny because he goes in there and Cornelius is baptized. They believe on the Lord Jesus. The whole household is saved. Oh, why can't we get some water in here right now? And they make it happen. And who knows, how far that went with Cornelius and his family and the things that he was already doing, and that kind of validation of, wow, you're accepting me even though I'm different than you. That's a big deal. And so, yeah, that second part of the paper, I don't know how many words that was when I started talking about the New Testament stuff, but now I have to figure out how to put all of that into paper and add all the different sources. Just saying it off the top of my head is not good enough. So that's going to be fun. But that's my task over the next 2 days. But anyways, it's there. And it's really cool to see the connection. And again, the reason I think this is fun to work on is because we have application with it ourselves here and now. You know, if I believe in Jesus, if I believe that he's chosen me, there's no election without commission. So I'm bound to want to share who Jesus is and what he's done for me with the people around me, even if it's not me just telling people, hey, there's this guy named Jesus and look at what he's done for me. I can live in a way that reflects to people these things, and they end up curious about it and ask more questions and wanting to emulate that, just like Cornelius, right? And then God will send the right people at the right time to. No one was telling Cornelius before he made these decisions, hey, what you're doing is wrong. You need to change that. No, he saw how people were living, and the way that they lived was the witness. And we can do the same thing as well. A lot of times we get fooled into thinking that no one's paying attention to us because we're not speaking. I don't know how many times I've said on this channel, body language is like 90% of communication. So what you say, people do hear that, but they might be hearing it a whole lot less than you think. And you might be a whole lot louder than you think, even though you're not saying anything. So do with that what you will. But there's no election without commission. When we accept the covenant that Jesus has blessed us with, John 3:16, you believe in me, we become part of this partnership. Well, guess what? It's up to us now to share the good news of who Jesus is and what he's done for us through the things that we say and the way that we live our lives, even more so. So yeah, it's fun to talk about, less fun to write a paper about, but at least the thoughts there. You know what I'm saying? Wish I could turn in the video and call it a day, but you ain't getting doctoral degrees like that unless you're like my buddy and you're in the media program for the doctoral. Maybe I might have to switch. We'll see. I'll think about that another time. But until then, go to Aqua taking a step ahead, and we out. Peace.